All right, so today I'm talking about diet. So, a lot of the things that I talk about on this channel, nootropics, supplements, that sort of thing, health, longevity, when you get to talking about this, it's frequently asserted that one of the main things that you need to focus on first, one of the fundamentals, is to get your diet in order. Now, there's agreement on that, but the big thing that people disagree on is what that good diet actually consists of. I know right now, specifically with nootropics more, as an example, keto, well, not just nootropics, but keto is pretty big, and paleo was just big, and these things, they come and go, these fad diets, there's a million and one of them out there. And they all claim to have science to back them up, and it can get really confusing and overwhelming at times. And I'm not an expert either. Again, I'm just some YouTube hack. So, what do I do in a situation like this? Well, I take a step back, all right, particularly because I'm not an expert. I don't know what to believe. So, what I do is I stick with the basics. I stick with the classics. I stick with basically what the textbook answers. So, like in this case, for example, I stick with what's basically amount. If you want to give it a name, I guess you could say it's a form of Mediterranean diet. It'd probably be the closest thing, but just basically the same general health tips that we've always gotten since the time we were in elementary school. Just kind of a reasoned, sensible approach, nothing too extreme. So, for example, you want it to be plant-based, that's important. You don't want to be a full-on vegetarian. That's not necessary, probably a little detrimental if anything. You want to have not just a lot of produce in your diet, but a wide variety too. Another heuristic, as you remember, is to have a rainbow of foods on your plate, rainbow of colors. It's a good way to ensure that you're getting diversity. And it's not necessary to go entirely without carbs. Just watch processed sugar, watch starch, basically the white stuff. So instead of white rice, brown rice. Instead of white bread, get a whole grain bread. And not every brown bread is necessarily healthy. If you're looking for a number, you want to go for no more than 10 to 1 ratio of carbs to fiber in your bread. So there's that. I guess if you're looking for a specific food that is good, like nuts, actually might be pretty good for you to snack on. Olive oil, that's I think the one. There's actually like 30 different types of Mediterranean diet, and I think one of the few things they have in common is they all use olive oil. And olive oil is one of those foods that specifically has health benefits other than just the nutrient composition of it. It's really good for preventing heart disease. More specifically, I think it's good for the health of your arteries. It keeps them from developing plaque and whatnot. It's good for fighting inflammation, the inflammatory processes that can lead up to that. So olive oil, nuts, but for the most part, plant-based, whole grains, whenever you're looking for carbs. You don't want to have too much red meat. Not that you can't ever eat it, but you want to kind of go sparingly with that. Be a lot more liberal with the poultry and the fish, but not necessarily any sort of an extreme diet. Not necessarily keto or no carbs or no this or that. I don't know. There's a zillion diets out there, but just basically the type of healthy eating, the standard textbook eating that you've been taught from the time you were in elementary school. Obviously you don't want to live on like Pop-Tarts and pizza rolls, so I guess some of the things specifically then that I like about this diet, it is the safe starting point, okay? This is the type of stuff that's got the most research to back it up in terms of prevention of disease and so forth. And I also like that it's sensible enough, it's balanced enough that it's not extreme. It's not so extreme that you can't go out to eat with people. I mean, it's the psychological benefits are something that basically when psychological factors are not taken into account enough when we think about health. You might be gung-ho in the beginning when you're joining a gym or when you're starting a new diet or whatever, but you've got to be able to stick with it. It's one thing to know what you're supposed to do, it's another thing to stick with it. And by taking this sort of a balanced, reasoned approach, having more of just a traditional healthy diet, and it's going to be a lot easier to stick with than if you're going to try to do one of these more extreme things. I think the more complicated the situation, and our biology is pretty darn complicated, the more a diverse, balanced approach is going to tend to be. And so I really just, I don't advocate any particular sort of, advocate. I make it sound like I'm sort of an expert. But no, I mean, I personally just recommend just sticking with what I consider to be the textbook healthy diet. And that is what you need to focus on. That's going to be plain to get started so that you can say that you've done all the fundamental stuff that you need so you can start thinking about nootropics. It's something of a trope, you can't, I'm looking at you, Reddit, you can't start thinking about nootropics until you get your exercise and your meditation and your diet in order. That's what they pound into you, but nobody ever talks about the diet. So just to kind of take it back to basics, that's really what I personally would recommend you consider a good diet. Keto, like I said, is really popular right now, and there's some interesting sounding science, but like I said, it's something that you kind of hear about everything, right? There's all this research to back it up, and stuff just kind of falls off. And as far as this stuff goes, I think it's still relatively new on the scene. I mean, these health fads have been coming and going for so long now. I mean, ultimately centuries, even, not millennia. And so pull back, go to the basics, back to the standard, classic, tried and true stuff. You don't have to get too fancy with it. And that's just basically my recommendation, for either from a nootropic standpoint or just more from a longevity standpoint. And then, of course, if you get going with this for a while and you've learned a lot about biology and nootropics and all that, and you want to do an N=1 sort of self-experiment, feel free to try something more extreme down the road. But for a noob who's just trying to get the basics in order before he or she can start experimenting with nootropics and supplements and some of that fancier stuff, this is fine. So just wanted to address that. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.